The White House just held a disastrous press conference. Donald Trump's press secretary, chief propagandist Karoline Leavitt, just started ranting about how everything is so unfair, and all the media is saying that Donald Trump's meeting with Putin was a disaster and his meeting with European leaders was a disaster, and he looks so weak and pathetic, and she's saying that's so unfair. Just watch her whine. Here, play this clip.
However, one thing that has absolutely not changed is the media's negative and downright false coverage of President Trump and his foreign policy accomplishments. From the beginning of this entire process, much of the left-wing media has been actively rooting against the President of the United States in the pursuit of peace. Initially, the media ridiculously claimed that President Trump was somehow beholden to Russia for even agreeing to have a face-to-face discussion with President Putin inside of the United States. The media said President Trump was making a grave mistake by, quote, legitimizing Putin. They were aghast that President Trump would treat another world leader like a world leader. The media relentlessly attacked President Trump and claimed he suffered a, quote, major defeat for not immediately emerging with a final agreement, even though he said heading into that meeting, this was a meeting to listen and to understand how to move the ball forward. All weekend following those historic U.S.-Russia bilateral talks, we listened to clueless pundits on television trying but failing to claim that the president had failed. The so-called experts in the foreign policy establishment, whose record is nothing but endless wars, trillions of wasted taxpayer dollars, and dead Americans.
Then after that, she talks about how Donald Trump really wants to go to heaven, and he's worried that he's at the bottom of the totem pole, and so he wants to do deals in order to go to heaven. Here, play this clip.
It's trilateral, and that Zelensky and Putin might come to this conclusion on their own. And then as a follow-up, I know the president said on Fox News this morning that he's partially seeking peace in order to get to heaven. Was he joking, or is there spiritual motivation behind his peace deals here?
I think the president was serious. I think the president wants to get to heaven, as I hope we all do in this room as well. Annie.
What the hell is going on in the White House? This is so utterly deranged. Then a reporter from the New York Times asked Karoline Leavitt if the goal was to get Europe and Putin and Zelensky on the same page, why, when Putin called Donald Trump, did Donald Trump leave the European leaders and Zelensky and say it would have been disrespectful to Putin to put Putin on the phone with everybody there? Why would that be disrespectful to Putin? And then you'll see Leavitt attacks the New York Times reporter. Here, watch this.
In fact, only a reporter from the New York Times would ask a question like that, Sean. The president met with all of these European leaders at the White House 48 hours after sitting down with President Putin on American soil. In fact, there was so much progress in the readout that was given to these European leaders immediately following his meeting with President Putin that every single one of them got on a plane 48 hours later and flew to the United States of America. And if I could just read for all of you some of the statements from those European leaders yesterday, you had President Zelensky himself saying it was a very good conversation. It was really good. We spoke about very sensitive points. The Secretary General, Mark Rutte, it was the president, only because of the president, that this deadlock.
Then a reporter asks, why do you think that Donald Trump believes that Putin just wants to do a deal on Ukraine that makes Trump happy? Like, is there something special that you think that Putin likes Trump that much, that Putin just wants to give Donald Trump deals? Or do you think he's playing Donald Trump? And then Karoline Leavitt's like, well, I think everyone sees how strong Donald Trump is. Look, he stopped nuclear wars. India and Pakistan were going to go to nuclear war. Trump stopped 7 wars already, including a nuclear war between India and Pakistan. News alert. India says you didn't do anything. You're just making up Trump resolving fake wars, and you look so utterly pathetic and weak. Here, play this clip.
President Trump, though, what do you think Putin's motivation is to try to do something for President Trump, as opposed to just resolving the conflict?
I think, as I just spoke to in my opening remarks, Kelly, Russia and all countries around this world actually respect the United States again. And the president is using the might of American strength to demand that respect from our allies, our friends, our adversaries all around the world. And we've seen that not just lead to progress with Russia and Ukraine, but also we've seen it in the closing of 7 global conflicts around the world as well. We've seen it with the release of hostages in Gaza. You've seen it with the end of the conflict between India and Pakistan, which could have resulted in a nuclear...
Then Karoline Leavitt threatens that the U.S. may go to war with boots on the ground in Venezuela, as there are 3 warships and 4,000 Marines headed to Venezuela now. So maybe go to war with Venezuela and then declare a peace treaty. That could be his 8th peace victory, huh? Maybe say we were going to go to nuclear war and you stopped another nuclear war. so ridiculous. Here, play this clip.
That there are areas of disagreement in this war that will have to be discussed and decided upon by these two countries. And so he wants these two countries to engage in direct diplomacy. He's said that from the very beginning, which is why he's agreeable to the idea of having President Zelensky and President Putin get together. And I understand accommodations for that meeting are underway. As soon as we hear more details, we'll be sure to let all of you know.
And just a quick follow-up. We know as of right now there is no ceasefire in place. We've seen Russia continue its attacks on Ukraine. What indications is the president getting from Putin that he wants to have this meeting with Zelensky soon?
Because he spoke to him directly, yes.
Then Karoline Leavitt is asked about, what do you think about the United States taking a stake in Intel? That the United States now controls corporations. So Donald Trump sends social media posts, threatens American corporations, and then seizes stakes in American corporations. I don't know. That sounds a little bit like communism to me. But okay, here, play this clip.
Done before to ensure that we're both reshoring these critical supply chains while also gaining something of it for the American taxpayer. You're welcome, Emily.
Thanks, Caroline. I wanted to ask about the 3 U.S. warships that are being sent to Venezuela, and there's 4,000 Marines on board. Are you looking at possibility of boots on the ground there?
What I will say with respect to Venezuela, President Trump has been very clear and consistent. He's prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into our country and to bring those responsible to justice. The Maduro regime is not the legitimate government of Venezuela. It is a narco-terror cartel. In Maduro, it is the view of this administration, is not a legitimate president. He is a fugitive head of this cartel who has been indicted in the United States for trafficking drugs into the country. And with that, I will leave you all, and we will see you later, if not tomorrow. And I look forward to taking more of your questions. Thank you.
Very, very creative. That's what he goes. He's a creative deal maker. No, he's a dictator taking over private companies. That's what he's doing. And the media refuses to call out what the hell is going on. Here, Karoline Leavitt goes on and continues to talk about how Putin just wants to make special deals with Donald. And look, Putin wouldn't even talk to other people before. But Donald got Putin on the phone with Donald. You see that? And now Ukraine speaking with Putin again. What are you talking about? There's no ceasefire right now. And Trump said there would be severe consequences against Russia if there was no ceasefire. Russia has not agreed to a trilateral agreement with Zelensky and Donald Trump. Russia's not agreed with that, and Russia's not even agreed to, holding any other meeting. I mean, there's like literally nothing that's been achieved. Here, play this clip.
What has President Trump learned that tells him that Vladimir Putin would be willing to make a deal for him, for President Trump?
Well, the president has learned a lot, which is part of the reason he opened up this dialogue. The previous administration, who oversaw the beginning of this war, refused to talk. And President Trump has always said, in order to learn, in order to move the ball forward with diplomacy and towards peace, you have to have open dialogue. And so that's why the president has had several conversations by phone and, of course, an in-person meeting last Friday with President Putin. He also has talked to President Zelensky dozens of times, had him here at the White House yesterday, and he's understanding what both sides want, what both sides are going to have to give up. And he has always said, in order to get a good deal, both sides are going to have to walk away a little bit unhappy. So he continues to learn a lot throughout these conversations, which is why we've seen progress from both sides. And I would also just add, when it comes to learning and moving the ball forward, look at how both Russia and Ukraine have actually talked directly for the first time in many years, thanks to the efforts of this president and this administration.
Specifically for...
Then she says that when Donald Trump is talking about getting rid of the slums in D.C. where criminals live, she's also referring to residences and buildings in neighborhoods that Donald Trump doesn't like. Okay, first off, you're not even sending the National Guard into the areas where more crime is being committed. You're sending them into like Foggy Bottom and Logan Circle and by the Lincoln Memorial to just put on these dictatorial shows, these performances. And by the way, crime in D.C. is lower than the crime in all of those states that are sending National Guard, like West Virginia and Mississippi and Ohio. But here, play this clip.
The D.C. crackdown.
Sure.
First, I was wondering if you could clarify something President Trump said. He mentioned getting rid of the slums where criminals live. Was he talking about tents or permanent residential buildings? And then the mayor has expressed an interest in clarifying how much of a focus illegal immigration enforcement is as part of this crackdown. Can you say anything about that?
Sure.
Third, any preview on the beautification clarification.
3 questions. I'll try to answer all 3 of them pointedly for you. First, when it comes to what you said, and the president said, the slums of Washington, D.C., he's referring to the most dangerous communities, neighborhoods, and streets in the city where, unfortunately, violence has ravaged these communities and taken the lives of, again, far too many law-abiding D.C. residents. We know on July 5th of this year, just more than a month ago, a 3-year-old beautiful young girl was shot and killed in her car with her family in one of these communities, which is why there has been a surge, despite what many of you have been falsely reporting. And I believe it was the Washington Post who put out a map claiming it to be fact-based when it was just based on, I don't know, accounts that they've heard on the street, not actual statistics and data. So we went and reconfigured the numbers. And as I said, nearly half of all the non-illegal alien-related arrests have occurred in wards 7 and 8 in the District of Columbia, where we know, excuse me, there's the highest rate of crime. So we'll continue to do that. And what was your second question, Stephen?
Legal immigration.
Then Karoline Leavitt gets into this weird back and forth with the Fox host saying, but you all know that Putin never would have gotten to this war in Ukraine if Trump was the president. You know that, right? Okay, first off, right now, there are 3 to 4 times as much attacks on Kyiv and Ukrainian cities and innocent Ukrainians dying right now under Trump than before Trump. Also, Trump would have just handed over Ukraine to Putin. That's what would have happened. Here, play this clip.
Jackie.
Thanks, Caroline. Since the president often says that this war would not have started if he were in office, and Putin confirmed that.
It's true. Do you accept that as true? The European leaders do.
Well,
and President Putin himself said that, by the way.
He did say that. The question I have, though, is what is the president going to do to ensure that these security guarantees last beyond him into the time when he is no longer president? And does that have to involve Congress at all?
Well, he understands the need for that, which he spoke to yesterday. And what's he going to do? It's why he's engaging in so many talks and so many conversations with both sides of this war with our European allies. It's why on the way home from Anchorage, Alaska, very late at nights, when I know many of you on the press plane were sleeping and many staff were sleeping, the president himself was still awake at 2 o'clock in the morning talking to European leaders and NATO about how we can ensure a lasting peace and bring this conflict to an end. He has expended an incredible amount of time, energy, and effort into bringing this war to an end, and he remains determined to do that.
And then finally, Jack Posobiec, I don't know how this guy now is, gets VIP treatment, this conspiracy theorist. He gets VIP treatment in the White House, and he wants to know about these security guarantees, Article 5-like security guarantees that Donald Trump was talking about. There are no Article 5-like security guarantees. Putin has said he's not allowing Europe to go into Ukraine or NATO to go into Ukraine or America to go to Ukraine. Putin said we're not doing Article 5 NATO-like security guarantees. Here, play this clip.
Caroline, thanks so much. So a couple of questions regarding the status of these peace talks. Obviously, we saw the president and President Putin there in Anchorage. We saw the world leaders here yesterday with this summit. We've heard phrases like coalition of the willing. We've also heard Article 5-like guarantees. When it comes to the security guarantees, what is the current status of that? I know the president earlier today mentioned boots on the ground would be UK, France, Germany possibly, but unequivocally said no U.S. troops on the ground, but U.S. coordination. Can you elaborate on that, and what would the red lines be?
Sure. Well, you got to the heart of what I was going to say to all of you today on security guarantees, which is the president has definitively stated U.S. boots will not be on the ground in Ukraine, but we can certainly help in the coordination and perhaps provide other means of security guarantees to our European allies. The president understands security guarantees are crucially important to ensure a lasting peace, and he has directed his national security team to coordinate with our friends in Europe and also to continue to cooperate and discuss these matters with Ukraine and Russia as well.
There you have it, folks. A total disaster. Let me know what you think. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million subscribers together.